I'm going to marry this guy. I know I'm going to marry this guy. But he did not have the same feelings about me.
Why was he still talking to you?
Well, that was a good question, Lila. But I would tell him, okay, Chris, we're not going to talk. If we're not going to date, you can't come around. I want a letter in the mail. God, if you want me to continue being Chris's friend, I want you to send me a letter in the mail.
From God?
From God. The next day I get a letter and I was so broken and I felt betrayed by God and I felt betrayed by my body. I've spent 20 years dating. I would rather die his friend than marry somebody else. I am so grateful for every single day it took my husband to get around to dating me and asking me to marry him because God saw it all. Yeah, he saw it all and it's so beautiful.
She got home after their first date and thought, that's the man that I'm going to marry. But it wouldn't be for 10 years until her dream would come true. Welcome back to the Lila Rose Show. Today I'm sitting down with the lovely Emily Stimpson Chapman, one of my favorite contemporary authors. We get into her personal love story with her husband, the ups and the downs of what they experience, and the call that God had on her heart during their whole relationship. We talk about their incredible journey with infertility and adoption and parenting, as well as discussing some of her recent work, including The Story of All Stories, which is a story Bible for young Christians. We love to talk about relationships on the show because we want everybody to be in flourishing relationships in right order with each other, marriages to be stronger, people seeking to be married to find their love, as well as parenting relationships to be stronger. We want everyone to thrive. I know and I hear from so many of you who are struggling with both dating and relationships and infertility. I think both Emily's story and advice are great inspirations for living those flourishing relationships. I'm so grateful to everybody who has been subscribing to the show. The channel continues to grow like wildfire. Thanks to all of you. Also, we're rising in the ranks on podcast app. I think we're in the top 50 now for society and culture, which is really exciting. And if you want to help us continue to grow, the quickest and easiest way to do that is to make sure that you like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you're listening on podcast app, make sure you're subscribed, leave us 5 stars and a review that helps the show reach more people. Emily Stimpson Chapman, welcome to the podcast.
It is so good to be here, Lila.
I'm glad. I feel like I already know you. I know you from a distance.
We've been friends online for I don't know how many years.
Well over a decade, at least.
You sent me Grubhub gift cards every time one of my kids was born.
How can I not? You have the cutest, sweetest kids and the best stories. I can't wait to talk about your story, all of your stories. I'm your fangirl. I'm your fan. You're one of the best writers on the internet right now. So thank you for your voice. It's really important.
All the other good ones have been chased off the internet.
Oh gosh.
By the crazies.
That's so sad. A lot of them have been chased off of X, actually.
That's true. I do not go, as we were saying. I love the Lord so much, but that is one of my boundaries. Sorry,
it's a mission
Lord.
field. It's
I love
a mission
you.
field.
No stigmata, no X, please.
X can be a lot of fun, but it can be a lot crazy too.
God bless you for doing it. God bless you. You're so much braver than I am. You're so
my
much braver.
wise, erudite husband is always my ex-advisor. I'm like, you don't know what's going on half the time because there's something crazy happening on X. And then somehow the rest of the world is blissfully unaware of the controversies on X. So this is the other bubble that happens.
I only get clued in when someone will say something like, have you seen what's happening on X? And I was like, well, for my mental sanity, I don't go on there, but I'll look now and see.
Yes.
So,
well, there was one of my dear friends who was like, can I be in studio for this episode? Because I love Emily. You have so many, I think, fans, lovers of your writing. You're obviously an incredible author. You're also a speaker. You're also someone that your personal story is so beautiful and inspiring. So I'd love to get into all of that. But first, for those that don't know you, how do you like to introduce yourself?
I am a wife. I am a mom of 3 little ones, and I'm a writer. And that's really what I do. Like, I love my husband. I take care of my kids. They're all little right now. And in the margins of our life, I write. Yeah. And that's what I've been doing for a long time.
What's your favorite thing that you've written?
Oh gosh, what is my favorite thing that I've written? Probably the book that's sitting in front of you right now. The Story of All Stories. I mean, I'm like a mom in the sense that, your favorite child, someone once told me, your favorite child is the child who needs the most attention. Mm-hmm. So like whoever's hurt at that moment or whoever really needs your attention. For me, there's always recency bias. So whatever's the most recent thing I finished and the one that I'm focusing on. But I think when I think about my children growing up and what books are going to really shape the way they know the faith, it's not going to be any of the other books I've written. I don't know if they'll read any of the other books I've written, but I know they'll read that. And I know that they're going to walk away because of the Story of All Stories, knowing the Bible in a way that I never knew it until I was in my 20s. So I think, that's why I agreed to do it. I agreed to do it because of my children. And so it will probably always be my favorite because it's the book that I really wrote for my children.
So this is the story of all stories. This is Emily's book, which I get a special copy of. It's coming out soon. Word on Fire publishing it, but it is the children's Bible.
Yeah, and they're not calling it a children's Bible. They're calling it a Bible for young Catholics.
Got it.
Okay. And it could be that you are 40 years old, young Catholic, and you need to know the story of salvation. This would be a great way to do it. Technically, it's written for kids ages 7 to 13, but I'm already reading it to my 4, 5, and 7-year-old, and they have been enjoying it. I've been reading it to them for a year, but now they get to see the pictures, so they're even more excited.
Beautiful. And it's really, I mean, I know it says a story for young Catholics, but this, I mean, anybody who's a Christian is going to, this is the Bible. And this is basically the beautiful story of the Bible. It
is. I mean, it tells the story of salvation from the moment God spoke time into existence and, time began right through Revelation. And Revelation was absolutely the hardest to write. Like, how do I write a storybook version of
it's a kind of a scary chapter.
Multi-headed beast and, like wars. So, I thought about C.S. Lewis and The Last Battle and how the story goes on. It's always up higher, further in, higher up and further in. And I found that was a great way to bring the child into the story. Like, this is part of the story. The story is still going on now. You're a part of the story. And I owe a lot to Lewis for everything. I owe a lot to C.S. Lewis for everything, but especially for that Bible, because he really gave me the imagination to see how to open up some of the toughest parts of the Bible to young minds and help them to not make them beautiful, but to help them see how beautiful the story is and how full of love and adventure and humor. Like, the Bible's really funny, and Word on Fire gave me permission to draw out the humor. So
I love that. I'm very excited for this because there's a lot of beautiful attempts at story Bibles for younger Christians, let's say younger Christians. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I haven't found one yet that I think, okay, this nailed the story, or like theologically, there were some maybe confusing things or things that maybe were not fully aligned, or, missed things I thought should have been included. There's all this laundry list. And I think I couldn't trust someone more than obviously Word on Fire and then yourself. So I'm very excited to dive into that. And congrats on your beautiful family too, Emily. I know that's a huge, along with your work, that's our greatest accomplishment here is the families we're blessed with. I want to go backwards, and I want to talk more about your writing too, because there's a lot of pieces that are very interesting and I think making a big impact that you've written. But your story is such a beautiful one. What you've been through, the hope and the faith that you've had, what you've overcome, your marriage now, your beautiful marriage. Can you tell us about how you met your husband?
It's okay. We don't have 10 seasons, which is really how the story should be told.
Give me the 10 vignettes. I mean, it's such a compelling love story.
Or crazy.
It's crazy in a good way.
I always feel like it needs a big disclaimer, like, do not try this at home, kids. Like,
I want to ask you about that, because I think people hear your story and there's a lot of takeaways potentially. Yeah. So I want to get your analysis of your own story. But first, for those that haven't heard it,
what is the story?
And also give us more of the background on Emily, because you've also overcome a lot of things personally.
Okay. So Chris and I met when I was 30 years old. And I had come back to the church 5 years before that. So I grew up Catholic, but I was catechized in the 1980s and early 1990s when not a lot of catechesis was happening, really John Paul II coming for World Youth Day in Denver in 1993 just set off this spark of catechetical reformation, like renewal that happened across the United States. But I was educated before that. So I didn't know the faith. I knew that we went to church every Sunday. I didn't really know Jesus. Like, I didn't know the Bible.
But you were Catholic school educated?
I was Catholic school educated, but this was during the 1980s. Yeah. So if you're not Catholic, this will make no sense. But if you're Catholic, you will understand the horror of this. We made our first communion at our Catholic school 2 years before first confession. So we didn't even do first confession until years after that. So I was very badly catechized.
And for those listening, the first confession, typically it's at the age of reason when you really have the capacity intellectually to understand and the will developed enough to be able to choose good, bad, and be able to confess your sins to God, be forgiven.
Which you're supposed to do before you receive First Holy Communion, because Catholics believe that really is, the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus. And you want to be able to have said, hey, Lord, I'm really sorry for having offended you in all of these ways before you receive Holy Communion.
How old were you when you received Holy Communion?
7, second grade.
I see, yeah.
So we did, First Communion in second grade, like people still do now mostly. But what I did know growing up was that both my parents came from big Catholic families and had tons of brothers and sisters. And so almost everybody lived in our hometown. And I always felt, I was one of 3, and I always felt like my parents had cheated my sisters and me by not having more kids. I was like, my kids' lives are going to be so boring compared to my life because I have all of these cousins and aunts and uncles, and holidays are so full of joy. And my poor kids are just going to have my 2 sisters as their aunts. Like, this isn't going to be fun. So for as long as I can remember, I wanted a big family. Like, I always joke that my starting plan was I wanted half a dozen redheads, and then we'd figure out if we could wait a while or if we should have another half dozen. So that was the plan, the 6 redheads. And I graduated from college, and no husband came along, and years kept going with no husband going along.
And you were dating.
I was dating. Yeah. I was meeting guys, but I don't want this to sound bad. I met some very lovely men, but I was always happy for them to leave at the end of the night. It was like, all right, that was fun. No, toddle along. None of the men that I met could I envision spending the rest of my life with. In the meantime, I had struggled with an eating disorder. I was struggled with anorexia for a number of years. And when I was 19, I'd left the Catholic faith. I'd met a very cute Protestant boy who put some questions to me about the church and Jesus and authority, and I didn't know how to answer them. And looking back, I didn't really want to answer them because I was way more interested in the boy than I was in finding out the truth. But I'm very grateful for those years. I made wonderful friends in the Protestant circles I moved in. I got to know Jesus for the first time, like really what it meant to have a relationship with him and to be honest with him and to let him break me so that he could remake me. And I was discipled by some wonderful women. I'm very grateful for those years. So fast forward, I'm 25. I'm working in Washington, D.C. It is the great Jubilee year of 2000. John Paul II was Pope.
So that was a Jubilee year.
It was a Jubilee year.
Yeah, 2025. We're here again.
So 2020. Cool. And I had a coworker who was really Catholic and also really loved Jesus. And I was very confused by that. He was a graduate of Franciscan University of Steubenville. And I didn't know how we could love Jesus so much and also pay attention to things that bishops said. So we would argue over work. We were in a shared workspace. It was a big office. I was working in DC at the time. And I would never admit that I thought he was right, but we would argue, and I would go home and think about it, decide that he was right. And then he'd find out like a month later. I was like, oh yeah, I totally agree with you on that question now. So I was coming around on all these issues. And in November of 2025, I felt like I really had to make a decision about, am I going to go back to church or not? But go back to the Catholic Church. And within a space of days, I did. And it was the easiest, most undramatic conversion story that ever existed on the planet. And I've always credited that to the graces of the Jubilee year and John Paul II. So
you were already Catholic. I mean, that's the thing. It wasn't like, it's not like you were an atheist. We say conversion a lot, I think.
It was a reversion to the Catholic faith. We're all
converting every day. And you're just getting back into
I loved Jesus already. I was walking with Jesus already. It was just a question of deciding whether or not I trusted that the Catholic Church said who she was. And when I made that decision, it was a huge blessing. But at that point, I was like, well, I don't want to stay in DC. So
why? What was it about DC?
I was so tired of everyone trying to be more important and impressive than they actually were.
Everyone says this about DC. It's a sad stereotype, but there's a lot of truth to it.
Everybody's going around, my boss, my boss, my boss.
Or you're at the cocktail party and they're looking past you to look at that next person who's looking over your shoulder.
You.
Like, are they like, what do you do? What do you do for work? And it's like, what can I get from you is always the question. Yeah.
And I'd moved up very quickly when I worked on Capitol Hill. They discovered I could write. And so I was 22 years old and sitting in on midnight meetings with Newt Gingrich, who was the Speaker of the House at the time, because they were like, well, we were working on the Mexico City policy. Yeah. And I had written something for my congressman that I worked for about it. And Newt Gingrich was so impressed with it that he brought me in to do messaging for the pro-life caucus.
Love it. I didn't know that, Emily. That's so cool.
Yeah. So God, I think, had shown me very quickly through moving me up so fast, this is not where I want you. And I was watching year after year, people were fighting about the same bills. Like every year, it's the same amendment that comes up to this appropriations bill. And I felt very clearly that was how it was going to continue to be unless you change people's hearts. And I was like, the problem is not convincing people to vote for this bill. It's that as a people, we're so broken and we don't know who we are and we don't understand what human dignity is, that we don't know how to vote. And if we can go downstream a little and start dealing with how people see the world and how they see the human person, that is going to change how people vote and what politics looks like. And I knew I wanted to get married. I knew I wanted to have a family. No husband had come along. So I decided, well, I'm going to go to Franciscan University and I'll study theology and maybe I'll meet a great man. I'll see a lot of Catholic families and what a really faithful Catholic family life looks like, because I didn't have that growing up. I had great parents, but the faith was not an important part of our life. And I was like, and if nothing else comes along, I'll just become a professor. I'll go on and get a PhD and then I'll be able to take care of kids while I'm teaching. So I did that, went back to Steubenville, and it was there that I started writing. And I always say that God kind of, he opened the door. So blogs were new. And I had started a little blog, just thinking it'd be fun to communicate with friends back home. And because there was nobody else blogging at the time, my blog got a lot of attention.
I think I read that blog back in the day. I mean, was it EmilyStimpson.com or
it was
the
like
website?
It was like Emily Stimpson Chapman.blogspot.com, right?
I'm sure I went there.
Had blogs. And
I was in DC. I hadn't fled yet, like you. I think I was there after you, and then I ended up fleeing, and then I met my husband. So
right,
not saying it's impossible to meet your husband in DC. If anyone's listening in DC, it is possible. Anything's possible.
It does happen.
It does happen.
But most of us flee.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the guys aren't interested in.
It's a mission field.
Getting married.
DC is a mission field.
It is. And I was so grateful that like I worked for men who were called there. I had friends who were called there. I was glad there were good people there. I was not called to be there. So I picked up my blog got a lot of attention. A lot of people asked me to write for them. I bought a house because I was tired of fixing up I was always fixing up rentals. I love to renovate houses. And I think I was laying in bed one night going, this house needs new ceilings. And I was like, no, Emily, you're not allowed to redo the ceiling in a rental. Like you must buy a house. Renovating houses is expensive. And so I started freelancing. And it was like at that point, God slammed the door behind me. He was like, all right, this is what you're doing. You are going to be writing and I'm not so much giving you a choice about this. And that's what I was doing. That's what I've been doing ever since. So in those years though, no husband's coming along. I'm dating. I'm at Franciscan University. Like I'm trying to meet nice young Catholic men, but nothing was right. And at 30, I went online on Catholic Match. And I did not want to go online at Catholic Match. I was like, Lord, I love men who like Jane Austen. And I
drop the handkerchief and they pick it up at the ball. That is what we were doing.
Exactly. I was like, I don't want to meet someone online, Lord. I don't want to meet someone
Honestly,
online.
I feel like the amount of stumbling blocks that Mr. Darcy and Jane Austen have been to a whole generation of women. I mean, there's good lessons to take from it. And I love those books, of course. But I think women are unfortunately, I think women do struggle today with being willing to put themselves out there because we do have these idealistic ideas and it can maybe do a disservice. So anyways, kudos to you for just saying, I'm going to do the dating platform.
I think Mrs. Bennett would have like made profiles for her daughters.
She had a level of wisdom, that lady. Yeah. I mean, she had a level of tremendous foolishness, right? Right. But there was a little bit of wisdom in how she saw the world.
Yeah. So if that had existed back then. But no, I felt like I was telling God, I want to get married. I want to get married. I want to get married. But I was trying to control how I met my husband. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like, all right, Lord, I'm going to open a window and you can, if this is where you want me to meet my husband, then
the prince can go through the window.
He will come in through the window. That's what we're going to do. And very shortly after that, I did meet the man who would become my husband.
Online.
We met on Catholic Match and this was before This was early days of Catholic Match. So everyone was still writing letters. So we wrote letters to like long emails to each other every day. Emails, not physical, but emails. There was no chat. There was no text. And we had our first phone call a couple of weeks after. And then he came in town and we went on a great date. And he took me to see all of these beautiful, he was from Pittsburgh, but he was teaching in South Carolina at the time. And he came up to visit his mom, but really to take me out. And we went around and looked at all these beautiful old buildings in downtown Pittsburgh and beautiful old churches. And I was so smitten by him. Like I was so nervous I couldn't eat, at the meal. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the man I'm going to marry. I'm sure this is the man I'm going to marry. And I came home and my best friend was there and she's like, tell me all about it. I was like, he showed me old buildings. And she's like, oh Lord, nobody could have picked a better date for you. But he did not have the same feelings about me. So his thought was not, I'm going to marry this woman. His thought was, she's really lovely. She's really interesting, but I don't think this is it. But he did want to keep talking to me. So we had this long distance on and off kind of friendship over the course of the next year.
And he wanted to keep talking to you because he liked your mind, your personality. Like there was a connectivity there and he didn't want to let go of that. Like what was, not that we're going to fully speak for him here because he's not here, but why? I mean, if he's like, I'm not interested like that, why was he still talking to you?
Well, that was a good question, Lila. That's a really good question.
It's a telltale sign of something,
well,
right?
It wasn't clear right away that that's not how he felt. Like he kept calling,
I see. So he wasn't like, emailing. I'm not interested, Emily. He just kept on communicating.
He just kept on doing exactly what we've been doing for about a month. For the previous month.
And you're like, I'm marrying you.
And I was like, I'm going to marry this guy. I know I'm going to marry this guy. But I wanted to sort of give him space. I didn't know he was far away. I didn't know what was going on with them. And I think in February, finally, I was like, hey, you know what? You're sending me all these letters. When you're in town, you come and see me. What's going on? Like, what are your intentions here, basically? And he was like, well, I really enjoy our friendship, but I'm not prepared for anything more, which I know a lot of women have heard those words. And I was like, at that point, he did explain some things to me. He was like, well, I have this history. He'd had 2 broken engagements. He had some physical, he was sick at the time in a way that nobody understood. It was probably long Lyme's disease is what we eventually figured out. He just didn't feel like he was in the headspace to make a decision. And as I always tease him, his idea of falling in love with the person you're supposed to marry is a Disney movie, like where forest animals start singing and there's birds twittering around. He was
very romantic.
It was very romantic. Yeah. He expected to feel basically what I felt looking at him, like, okay, this is exactly who I want to marry.
Yeah.
And he didn't feel that way, but he's like, but I really like her. Like, I love being around her. She's interesting. She's funny. She's a good woman. I like to spend time with her, but I'm not there.
Quick segue, because I don't know. I feel like we have to do a little philosophizing on your story as we go. There's so much about it. But I think that like, that's so interesting because there is, back to Jane Austen novels and everything else, there is a cultural narrative, which isn't all wrong, but it definitely can be taken too far. Like you have to like be the most attracted or the most drawn to the most magnetic connection for it to be the one, right? And especially for men, they're told, well, you have to be super into her in terms of like attractiveness and feeling like you're ready for this for it to make sense. And I think there's so much nuance that gets lost in these prescriptions that we give.
Well, my husband has a theory that, because you hear a lot of times you talk to these lovely older people and they're in their 80s. I'm like, my grandfather and my grandmother, my grandpa met my grandma when he was 12 years old and he looked at her and said, I'm going to marry that woman. And sure enough, 6 years later, he married that woman. So Chris has this theory that that's kind of how we were made. We were made to very quickly know who we're called to love, but sin has harmed us in ways, and Hollywood and romance novels and all these things have changed our expectation. Stuff, like they've hurt us, the sexual sins. My husband had, he'd lived with his girlfriend for a couple of years in college. And so I was very pure. I was very innocent at that point. And so my reaction to my husband, he's always like, well, you were in a healthier spot than I was to see clearly. I couldn't see as clearly. And I think that is true. I think sin really does affect how we see each other. It affects our expectations. And so it's not that love at first sight never happens and those relationships never work out. It just is rarer these days. So he thinks the sexual revolution has really changed our ability to instantly have that love at first sight and have the good sense to to recognize when we meet someone we should marry. So again, this is like
great insight.
We could go on.
The lives of the saints are incredible witnesses to prayer and God's love in our lives and throughout history. I'm very excited about Hallow, the #1 prayer app's new challenge. They're doing a 7-day challenge accompanying with the prayers of the saints, including King David, Queen Esther, Saint Therese of Lisieux, one of my favorite saints. On September 15th, you can join for 7 days of prayer with the saints over at Hallow. I've loved Hallow now for years, ever since I first downloaded it. It is full of thousands of prayers, meditations, scripture resources, and more to help you deepen your relationship and walk with God. And then you can go over to hallow.com/Lila and download Hallow for 3 months free. Join me for 7 days, prayers with the saints, starting September 15th. That's hallow.com/Lila. Our 3-year-old son loves to eat meat. And he really loves the meat that we get every month from GoodRanchers.com. GoodRanchers.com is American meat delivered. It is the highest quality beef products, chicken, pork, fish that is sourced here in the United States, mostly from small family ranchers and farms. I love these products because they are really the best on the market. They're the most delicious, tender, juicy steaks. The chicken is flavorful and moist. It's not that stringy, dry, rubbery chicken that you get from the grocery store. In fact, the Good Ranchers chicken is my favorite product there. The steaks are amazing too, but they say you go for the steak and then you leave for the chicken. If you go to GoodRanchers.com today and subscribe to one of their delicious monthly boxes, you will get $25 off your first order, as well as fast and free shipping. And if you use the code Lila, you'll get an additional $40 off your order. Also, if you get the monthly subscription, you will also get your choice of free bonus meat for life. So go to GoodRanchers.com today and don't forget to use the code Lila at checkout for an additional $40 off your first order of American meat delivered from GoodRanchers.com. A huge thank you to our sponsor, We Heart Nutrition. We Heart Nutrition is America's premier pro-life, family-owned supplement company. These supplements are made in their most bioavailable form for your body for easy absorption and digestion. When I remember to take my vitamins, I feel it. I feel less brain fog, especially when I take the magnesium supplement. And when I forget to take my vitamins, I feel it. And they have a new product over at We Heart Nutrition that I'm excited about. If you know somebody who is concerned about their bone density or their bone health, there's a specific product for your bone health. It's for men and women ages 40 and older. Go to WeHeartNutrition.com right now and take their 20-second survey to find out the best supplement package for you that is specialized for wherever you are in your life, wherever you are with your health. That's WeHeartNutrition.com. Use the code Lila at checkout for a full 20% off your order.
It's a season by season blow. I mean, for 10 years, so this goes on for 9 years, us keeping our friends entertained the whole time. My friends did not know what to do once we finally started dating. But I would tell them, okay, Chris, we're not going to talk. Like, if we're not going to date, you can't come around. We're not going to spend time with each other. Like, I need to be open to other men. I want to get married. I want to have a family. And he would say, okay. And then somehow months would go by and something would always happen where we'd start talking again. And once we started talking again, we would fall right back into our old patterns. And I should say none of these patterns were ever sinful. Like, we had a very good friendship. We never put each other even in a near occasion of sin. It was very chaste. We loved talking with each other. We loved being with each other.
You're buddies.
We were such good friends. But I was praying every day, like, Lord, like, I want what you want. Like, if you want Chris for me, I want Chris. If you do not want Chris for me, I don't want him. Please change my heart. But I don't know what to do, Lord, because I felt like God was always saying, like, this is who I have for you. I mean, so chills. There was like this phrase that I would get whenever I'd be like, I'm so done with this, Lord. What do you want me to do? Should I say something and cut this off? And, I'm never very good at the chapter and verse, but it was like in patience. It's why in quiet and confidence is your strength. And I'd be like, okay, so I'm supposed to be quiet. Lord, that's how I always took it. Like, I needed to be patient. I needed to trust. I needed to be quiet. And so I'd be patient. And one time I was so irritated with the whole situation. I was like, Lord, I am done. Like, if you want me to, I'm like, I want a letter in the mail, God. If you want me to continue being Chris's friend, I want you to send me a letter in the mail.
From God?
From God. I told God I wanted a letter in the mail. The next day I get a letter, not from God, but from a friend. And on the back of the envelope is that stupid verse, like, in quiet and in confidence is your strength.
Did she know that verse meant a lot to you?
She had no clue. Nobody knew. I never told anyone about this verse. Never until after we were married.
Was the letter about Chris?
No, it was about me helping pay her gas
you.
bill. I was paying her gas bill for her. So she was writing me a thank you note for helping her out with her gas bill. And it had that verse on the back of it. And I was like, all right, Lord. There was another time right before he moved back from South Carolina. I didn't know he was going to be moving back. And I was leaving Mass on campus and I was sad. I was like, Lord, I am so hung up on this guy who I haven't talked to we haven't talked for a long time. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I believe your will is in the situation. And the situation is that I am here and he is there and we are not talking. And so like, Lord, unless you want me to, I'm like, I am done. I'm not going to say another prayer about this guy unless you change the situation. Like your will is in the situation. That night, Chris called me to tell me he was moving back to Pittsburgh. I was like, okay, God, what are you doing?
Like demonic activity. No, I'm joking, obviously.
It was like so ridiculous.
So yeah. I've got to ask you because this is a really important point. The point about chastity, that was really important because it's one thing if you're like, we're not married. He doesn't actually want to marry me, but like we're still doing sexual things together. It's like, no, don't do it.
If you are leading each other into sin, that is not God working in your life.
But then the other thing is your posture because you maintained occasionally, sometimes you'd freeze him out and then like he'd come back in and you would talk and you would have this like friendship, a very real, beautiful friendship. That was really hard for you. But it sounds like you were actively trying to be open to other men.
I was
during this
dating,
season and you would go on other dates. Okay.
I was still on Catholic Match, still going out with other guys, still asking God every day, like, Lord, like, if you do not want this to be my heart, like change my heart. My prayer was not, God, give me Chris. God, give me Chris. God, give me Chris. Mm-hmm. I want to be Chris's wife. I was like, Lord, I really care for this guy, but if this isn't what you want, I don't want this. And those weren't always easy words to pray. I'm like, those were hard words, but I knew that I didn't want anything. Like it was the Christian virtue of hope where like you want heaven most of all, you want Christ most of all. And God had blessed me with that hope. And I'm like, no, what I want is you, Lord. And if this isn't what you have for me, if this is not going to draw me closer to you, if this is going to separate me from you, I don't want this. Take this away and give me what you do want. And I was going out with other guys and I had a great single life, Lila. Like I remember at one point I was probably 38 and I'd gone out with a guy who was such a jerk. He was such a jerk.
How so? I mean,
like he probably was, I should not say he was a jerk. He was trying very hard to impress me, but he was coming off in a very cocky way. And he had flown in from out of town and he was rude to my friends. And we'd gone on a double date or actually like a triple date with some other couples because I wasn't just going to go out with any random guy who came to town and spend all night with them. Not all night, but the whole evening. And he was insulting them, saying they weren't treating their women they had with them nicely enough. I had season tickets to the symphony, so we had gone to the symphony, and he was complaining about my seats that they weren't nice enough, and that if I had gone to where he was, he would have
got it. So it wasn't. Yeah.
He was just very rude. And then he tried to be inappropriate with me at the end of the night. And I was like, all right, bye.
He's like, these might be cheap seats, but you're pretty cute. And like, just don't.
Like, no, Lord.
Like, not now, not here. Not ever.
I was so tired at this point because I was probably 37. Yeah. The single girl book had just come out, maybe 36. And I was like, Lord, this is exhausting. Like, I really love my life. I have wonderful friends. I have a home I love. I have work that has meaning to me. Mm-hmm. I get to love on all of my friends' kids. I have an abundance of beautiful little ones in my life. I get to travel. I was traveling to Europe all the time. And I was like, someone's got to be really great at this point to come along because you've blessed me so much. And I had a lot of joy. So I wasn't desperate to marry anyone. I was just like, I want to be married still. I still want babies. I still love this Chris guy who I was not talking to at that point.
What's the longest time you went without talking to him? In the 9-year span?
In the 9-year span, probably 8 months.
Wow.
Those were really 8 months. And what I discovered and I always hesitate to say this because I'm always scared some other woman's going to not fully, I don't know. I don't want always people to do as I say, don't do as I do. Don't do as I do necessarily because it's so complicated. It doesn't normally work out this way. But what I realized over the course of all of our breakups and getting back, we call them breakups now that we're married
but you were never girlfriend and boyfriend during those 9 years.
Like break-offs. We were breaking off the friendship. When we were not speaking, it was so incredibly hard. And I would go to bed at night and be like, Lord, I can't do this another day. I can't do this another day. And I would wake up the next morning and it would be even harder. Like there was every day was hard. And there were times when we were friends and I would go to bed and say, Lord, I can't do this. This is ridiculous. This is frustrating. Like, you've got to give me some grace to do this another day. And I would wake up the next morning and I absolutely had the grace to do it. And I was like, no, this is what I want. Like, I want to be friends with this man. And I think there came a point, like at one point he almost died and he was in the hospital for a week. And this was during us not talking period. And he called me and was like, I'm dying. Come to the hospital. And I went to the hospital and you're like, we held hands in the hospital for a week.
Wow.
And, it was like a Mexican soap opera. It was like a telenovela. It was so crazy. And our friends were just getting the blow by blow. Truly, they didn't know what to do when we finally started dating. But even after that, he had to get healthier. We didn't start dating again for about a year after that. I had been on an interview on a big Catholic radio show on Sirius XM. And I thought I was going on to talk about a book I'd written about American Catholic history. And instead, all the host wanted to talk about was the fact that I was still single. And
ouch. How old were you at this point?
I was 39.
That must have not been fun.
It was so terrible. And Chris and I were not dating at this point. We're spending a lot of time together. And he had spent all day trying to get Sirius in his car so he could listen to the radio. So he's listening to this whole thing. And there was the host was really inappropriate. There was some very double and entendre kind of remarks made about my body and Brussels sprouts. And it was just crazy and bizarre. And so I was in tears when we got off of the interview. Like, I didn't cry on air, but I was so upset. I was like, I've been humiliated. It's every single woman's worst fear, right? You're 39 years old. You go on national radio.
Wait, what were the Brussels sprouts about?
He was asking me about my I was talking about, my single male friends or something and my cooking. And he was like, oh, what do they like you to cook? And you have three choices in this type of interview.
Right.
Someone's you can play along and be inappropriate I could have played along, been sexually inappropriate with my own double entendres, which I was not going to do. You can be the aggressive wench and come back at him hard and come off like, a real, like someone's like Miss Feminazi sort of person, or you can play dumb.
You can rebuke him. Basically.
You can rebuke him.
And then they'll be like, you're a feminist.
Exactly.
And you're like, I'm just a Catholic woman. Like, leave me alone.
Who would like not to have offensive remarks made and like veiled language about, my body. Or you can play dumb. And I chose to play dumb. Yeah. I am not dumb. I knew exactly. So there was a co-host from Franciscan who was there.
Is this guy still on air?
He is. And he very kindly has apologized to me. So I am no longer angry.
He had a bad day. He had too many.
It took a decade, but I got an apology. He heard from someone that he was like, I heard she was, So anyhow, so the co-host comes up to me. He's like, don't you realize what he was saying? And I was like, of course I know what I was saying, but what choice did I have? So I had played along and just, and they're like, what do they like you to cook? I was like, well, they love my pasta. They love my Brussels sprouts. He's like, yeah, I bet they love your Brussels sprouts. And I was like, oh, do you have to make a dirty joke about Brussels sprouts? Like, what is wrong with you when you make a dirty joke about Brussels sprouts?
So Chris heard all that.
Chris heard all of that. He felt so bad the next day. He greeted me with flowers and a bottle of wine.
He felt bad because it's his fault.
He felt so bad because it was his fault. He always jokes about the single girl book. He says, yeah, she was single to me when she wrote that. But we still didn't talk about it. And at this point, Chris was starting to try to have conversations. He'd be like, so do you feel like maybe one of the reasons that you're not married yet is because of our friendship? And I'd be like, I don't know, maybe, who knows? Because I didn't want to have any more conversations. Because at that point, I'd initiated so many conversations over the years. Chris, we can't do this. Chris, we have to talk about this. And they always ended badly. They always ended with us not talking. And I was done with that. Like, I hit a point where I was like, you know what, Lord, maybe you weren't really calling me to be his wife. Maybe you're saying, I want you to be his friend. And I would have, at that point, I was like, I'd rather be Chris's friend than anyone else's wife. I've spent 20 years dating. I'm tired of dating. I've never met a man who's as good as my husband, who's as good as Chris is, who's as kind, who I love to be with as much. And there must be something in him that he can't move forward with marriage. And I would rather die his friend than marry somebody else. And so every time he would try to have one of these conversations, I was trying to dodge them. No.
Oh, no. This was
interior.
In your heart.
This was in my heart.
Did you tell anyone that?
My best friend knew. Yeah.
What did she say?
They were all had given up at that point.
They're like, we cannot control what Emily does because like we do not approve, but
they all have gone from like not approving and to being just like, you always find your way back to each other. Like, what is even the point of not spending time together anymore? Because you're just going to start talking again. So, but I also was seeing spiritual directors at this point. I had over at different points, I'd had two very holy spiritual directors who kept encouraging me to be friends with Chris. They're like, no, I think you should continue on in this friendship. And, one of them was Father Ray Ryland, who's this amazing Catholic priest who had converted from Anglicanism and like knew Walter Hooper, C.S. Lewis. He was just very holy and very lovely. And he would always be like, I'm praying on every morning he would be on his exercise bike and he was in his 80s and he'd be like, every morning I'm praying for you and Chris. And I was like, oh, thank you, Father Ryland. So I had these spiritual directors who were encouraging me to continue to be friends. Again, because I think they didn't see any signs of sin. Like my friendship with Chris made me better. Like I loved Jesus more because of our friendship. I was more humble. I understood suffering more. I was becoming more who God made me to be through this friendship. And I think that's what they saw. And they saw the peace that I had in the friendship with him that I did not have when Chris and I weren't talking. And so the spiritual directors were encouraging me to stay in this relationship. My friends had given up thinking we would ever actually not talk. But Chris then is now the one who for a period of months is trying to get me to have these conversations. And I didn't want to talk about it because I just assumed, well, if we talk about it, I had given up on the thought of him ever wanting to date me. And I was like, we're not going to date. And so if we have this conversation, we're going to stop talking. And I don't want to do that anymore.
So you'd given up hope.
I'd given up hope. I did not think, I was like, this is not going to happen. And finally we were, a friend of his kind of lit into me about our friendship. And I broke down in tears in front of Chris about it. And we went for a drive. And we were in Abbeville, South Carolina. And on that drive, he's like, well, maybe we should actually start dating. And I was like, maybe what? Like, are you serious? And it was so natural and yet so surreal all at the same time. And so that was in December of 2014. And we started dating and we got engaged a year later. He had wanted us to date for a full year because he'd had these two sort of precipitous engagements, and one had been to a good friend. And it was in the course of their engagement that he got to see her family dynamics and realized how she participated in some really problematic family dynamics. And he was like, I don't think I want to bring that into a marriage. So
he broke up the former engagement.
He broke
both of them?
The first one he broke off.
Okay.
The second one, he broke off the engagement, but wanted to continue dating. And they did for a while. And then she broke off the relationship.
So he was picky. I mean, well, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, he was...
clearly, it took him 9 years to finally...
He was picky. I think his illness really did affect him. Like Lyme disease.
And I don't say picky pejoratively, by the way. I'm not saying that pejoratively.
My husband is an incredibly good man. He is a good man and he's a wise man. And I think that's why a lot of people were struggling to see why he was still single in his 40s. Because they're like, Chris Chapman's awesome. Like, Chris Chapman is such a good guy. Why can he not, like, move it forward and pick a woman and marry? Not because he wasn't a jerk. He wasn't sinful. He was a
he wasn't a sex addict. He didn't have mental health issues, deep wounds that were preventing healthy relationships. He had a job. There wasn't the skeleton in the closet there.
There's no red flags other than there's two broken engagements and he's single and he's like, my husband's very handsome. He's good looking and he's not married. Like, what's going on? I have Lyme disease right now, so I've been on killer antibiotics.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. In Pittsburgh, it's like everybody gets it. We might as well just keep doxycycline in our fridge and take swigs of it every day. But it really does affect your clarity. And he first got it from everything we can tell back in the 80s when nobody knew what to do with it. And it had very
he chronically had it for years.
Chronically had it. All of these health problems, so much confusion. He was not himself for a long time. Like, he could not think straight about a lot of these things. And his health scare in 2012, when I had spent the week in the hospital with him, kind of moved along some healing in a direction that he started seeing a doctor who helped him move to a better, healthier place. So a lot of it was, I think, and we just don't know. And that's what, so I'll hear from women all the time, be like, there's no good men out there, or I meet guys and there's these issues. And I was like, okay, God is healing people all the time. The man who is perfect for you right now could be sick. He could have Lyme's disease, or he could be dealing with the grief from the loss of a parent. Like, you don't know who is broken today, who is going to be whole tomorrow. Like, we think we can see everything, and all we can see is a moment, and God sees it all. And so all those years when I was being patient and trying to do what God wanted, like, God used those years too. Like, we look back and sometimes we'll say, because Chris for a long time really struggled, because once we started dating, we were so happy. Like, it was the easiest, most natural thing in the world to date. It was so easy to get married. Like, those first years of our marriage, like, it's all, I always say being married to Chris is the easiest thing I've ever done. Like, we had such a solid friendship, and he's so loving.
The dating was hard. The marriage was easy.
The friendship was hard.
The non-dating friendship was hard.
Right. Like, we had a lot of hardships out during that time. But Chris, every once in a while, and he did this a lot early on before our kids came, and he would say, I wish, like, I don't know what was wrong with me. I wish we had more time. I hate that we lost all that time. But I'm so glad it worked out as it did. Like, God knew it all. When I got on Catholic Match that day in 2005, probably like right around now, 20 years ago, it's been 20 years in August since I got on Catholic Match. God saw it all. He saw all of the waiting. He saw all of the friendship. He saw all of the work that he would do in me during those years. If we'd gotten married right away and maybe been able to start a family right away, I had just started freelancing at that time. I'd just written my first article for First Things. Would I have kept writing? Would I have done the work that God has given me to do over the past 20 years?
Would this book exist?
Would that book exist? Would my book that I wrote for single women when I was 35 that I never wanted to write, would that exist? And no matter what, we would not be the parents to the children that we have. And I know you want to talk about our children who all came to us through adoption. And, our first son's first mother, the reason she chose us is she wanted a family who had no other children and who couldn't have children. We never, even if we've been considering adoption at that time in 2018, would we have been chosen to be his mom.
So this is your first son?
Our first son, yeah.
And so you and Chris get married, so this is a year-long dating.
Yeah. 5-month engagement.
5-month engagement. So then at that point, Chris is like, we're doing this.
We're like, what is it?
We're doing this.
We had I had all these speaking engagements because I was doing a lot of speaking back then. Yeah. And I was like, so we were trying to figure out when can we get married and where's
Toby is your oldest son.
Toby's our oldest son. Yeah.
Okay. His story is amazing. You got to let us know though how he asked you to marry you and then the grand finale. I mean, it's not the finale,
but Chris hates these stories. He hates it when I talk about all this because he's like, I'm the bad guy. I'm always the bad guy in the story. I was like, honey, you're not the bad guy. It was the best guy. He's the best guy. Yeah. And he's such a good man. And all of my friends who didn't know him very well through all those years, the more they got to know him, they're like, oh, this is why Emily waited. So many people have met him and they're like, oh my gosh, this is no wonder you waited so long. And I was like, yeah, he's really awesome. He was all excited. So I have my grandmother's ring, and my grandmother died when I was 19. I was very close to her. She was a young grandma. And I always knew that I would get the ring if I wanted it. And so he asked my mom for the ring, and he had all these big plans to come back and ask me to marry him on the Feast of the Epiphany. And then he got sick and had 103-degree fever. Was sick for days and days and days, and knew he had to ask me because I had all these speaking engagements that I had to honor, and the window was closing. And so he came over for dinner and on my couch, and just a very sweet way asked me to marry him. And it's nothing big or grand like he'd wanted to do, but I didn't care. He asked me to marry him.
How did you feel when he asked you to marry him? After 9 years at this point, or are we going on 10 years?
Let's see, that was 10 years.
After 10 years of first meeting him and thinking he's the one, 10 years later, now he's finally asking you.
I was a little scared. I was scared that I would always worry that he didn't really love me and that he had I think I was scared because 10 years of what's going on, what's happening, does he love me? Why will this guy not go away? Why does he keep calling me? What is wrong with this man? All of that not feeling good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not sweet enough. I'm not, I'm not enough. Like I had a lot of years of feeling like I wasn't enough. And I was very worried that even after we married, I would still feel like I was not enough. And I will say I worried about that through the whole of the engagement. I was very worried about that. And now I had nothing to worry about. Like my husband has just lavished me with love and affection. And you can show affection differently when you're married than you can when you're single. And so marrying and being able to be fully affectionate with each other and fully intimate and just building a life together, and the way he showed his love and the way he, so there's this beautiful passage in, I think it's in The Great Divorce, where C.S. Lewis talks about how, both grace and sin can work backwards and forwards. So people in hell look back on their life on earth and they see it was hell all along, because every step of their life was leading them to hell. And people who are in heaven look back on their life and every moment it was heaven, because it was all leading them to God. And something like that is true of my relationship with Chris. Like when we look back on it now, it feels like we were always married. Like it feels like we were always dating, like we were always a couple. Like it's the grace has worked back and healed all of those memories and all of those insecurities, and just covered every bad memory in the love and the life that we have now. And so all those fears proved the marital graces, the graces of the sacrament are so powerful, and they've healed all those wounds and all those memories, so that it's not an issue now. And it's hard I have to like work. It's like Chris gets exhausted by the telling of the story, because we're always telling it.
You're past it. You're so past it.
We're so past it. We've been married for 9 years now.
We've been married for 9 years,
and
3
it's
kids.
A real relationship. Yeah. And like, that's where the love story begins.
He needs to be on the show. Dang it. We should have had a double this. I made this mistake before in the show. I have the retelling of this amazing love story, and it's like, where's the husband? And we actually have done it with the man, where it's like, where's the wife? But we'll have to have him on next time.
You'll have to have him on. He's great.
He sounds like he's very wise too.
He's so wise, and
that's so beautiful.
Like such a gift to me. Like I always, the writing I do, I'm such a better writer because of Chris. I'm a better woman because of Chris. I'm a better mother. Like I am more Emily because of Chris. I am more who God made me to be because of him. And that was true during our friendship, and it's been true during our marriage. And so, yeah, but I guess that's why I'm always like, this is the least interesting part of our life. It's the sitcom part. It's, I always say when I'm talking to audiences, you can tell how old people are by, do they know Sam and Diane from Cheers? Or do they know Luke and Lorelai from Gilmore Girls? Or like Mulder and Scully from X-Files? Like the shows make it seem like that's the interesting part, the will they or won't they. But the real interesting part is when the marriage begins. And you give in yourself and you're living a life together, and everything else is just a prelude. Like it's not the main show. And I see Chris so differently now than I saw him 15 years ago, when we were in the middle of what's going on with him. What is he doing? And I see who he is, and I see how he was suffering and what he was struggling with, which makes me think about God, like how God looks at us. We're so caught up in the moment, and he sees us now, and he sees us 10 years from now, and he sees us 20 years from now. He sees the whole of our life. He sees every prayer we're going to pray. He sees the prayers that we're so glad he didn't answer. He knows which prayers we're going to be glad he did not answer. And, being in a relationship now with Chris for 20 years, like I can kind of see Emily. I get a little glimpse of how God sees us, because I'm like, oh, thank God he didn't answer that prayer that you prayed that day in that way. Thank God he, knew what you would ultimately want, what you would want more than what you wanted in that moment. And if that long experience of waiting and praying and struggling to trust and hoping has taught me anything, it's that God really knows what he's doing. Like he sees all, and he knows all, and he knows how to bring something beautiful out of something that we think no beauty can come. And so, yeah, I'm really grateful for that long story. But it's also the least interesting part of our life together.
Well, your kids, the crown of the marriage, the child. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But I've got to ask. You wrote the single guide, guide for single girls,
Catholic Girls Survival Guide to the Single Years.
Yes, which is a classic. I understand it's still selling to this day. Surprise, surprise. But so I've got to just ask, because there's so much that could be gleaned from the prelude. Yeah. And then there's even more that can be cleaned from the marriage and everything you're doing now as a family. But what would you say is your, top couple pieces of advice for single men and women who are trying to find that person, right?
Yeah.
And I have heard so many stories, Emily, of both women and men who were interested in somebody else and they were not as interested as they were, and just the strain that comes from that, or the pain that comes from that. And, rarely it's 9 years. Like that's might be a record.
Most people are saner or
saner, or maybe
not as patient.
Yeah. Again, it's like how you, like, it's all how you discern it, right? You can't like, there's no automatic system here. There's no sort of like calculation here that you can just put in the numbers and it spits out the answer. Like you have to discern it with God, spiritual directors. There's so many elements that are personal, to this. So anyways, what would you say? Like, if you were talking to a woman who's like, Emily, like, what should I do? Let's just do the scenario. I'm with a guy and he's not interested, but I love him,
Well, I mean, the first thing you look at is there sin in the relationship?
Well, what if he has an addiction? Like I hear this a lot. I just did a call-in show. One of the gals called in and she was sharing about the sexual addiction's a strong word, but the habit. The habit of falling into porn use and masturbation.
I think as long as that habit is there without serious intent, that's one thing if there's like a relapse and occasional, but if he is not seeking help, if he has not been a number of years or at least number of months without seeking comfort in that, you should not be dating that guy. I've seen it destroy too many marriages. I've seen the effect it has. Like it's cause for an annulment. Like you can't keep dating somebody
if it's unknown, right?
If is
that a cause for annulment if it's known?
If there's a pornography addiction, the inability to give yourself because you're so beholden to that, you're like an alcohol addiction. If they're addicted to alcohol and you marry them, that's still something you're going to go back and look at in an annulment because the person wasn't capable of giving himself freely. And so if you have someone with a pornography addiction who thinks that marrying you and being able to have sex with you is going to solve his addiction, like you're basically, that's not a free gift of self. And so, yes, that would absolutely be something that would come up during an annulment.
Sadly, what you just said, and I know you actually write about adjacent themes to what you just said, but that is a unfortunate misunderstanding, I think, amongst even many Christians today, where they interpret St. Paul and they say, marriage is given to us because we're burning with passion. And so therefore, our spouse is an outlet for this passion. And I know there's an element of truth there, but if you're missing the larger picture, it can become an occasion for sin, quite frankly, and objectifying the spouse. But what are your
Well, we struggle to understand the difference between lust and attraction. They are different. Like you should be attracted to your spouse. You should want to sleep with your spouse, but that attraction is for the whole person. Like it's for who you love the way they look. You're attracted to them physically, but you want to talk to them. You want to be with them. You want to trust them with yourself. Like you are attracted to who they are. Like my husband is attracted to me, every part of me. Your husband is attracted to you, every part of you. Lust is when you reduce the person to their body, to one part of themselves, and that's what you want. If somebody wants just your body, that is lust. If somebody wants your body and all of you and to make a gift of themselves to you and to receive the gift of yourself, that's attraction. Attraction is good. Attraction is holy. Attraction is from God, like we see it in the Song of Songs. Lust is not from God. Lust is reducing a person to less than who they are. And a person who is addicted to pornography has an active addiction, an active habit of use. You can't know that he sees you for who you are. Like, how do you know until you've sorted that out? And it's not to say this person is never going to become marriageable. It's not to say that someone who's broken today is going to be broken forever. But as a man, he has a responsibility to learn how to value women for who they are, for creatures of God, like creatures made in the image of God, people who reflect the image of God as much as they do, in their ability to reason and choose right from wrong and give themselves. Like, so a man who has a pornography habit, a regular habit, has no business dating because that woman's not going to solve it for him. That's not how life works. Like, that's not going to.
Well, I think it's connected back to in a marriage, if you are, basically the object for sexual fulfillment, and sexual fulfillment is out of the context of loving the whole person.
Yeah.
Then that is lust in a marriage. I think that's a really important point for people. You should, in a marriage, like the sex and sexual attraction needs to be ordered towards the good of the other, seeing the other as a gift, seeing the fullness of the person in their subjectivity. And if you don't do that, then you're using your spouse as a sex object.
Right. If you can't see, in every marriage, sex is a wonderful gift. It is a wonderful part of marriage. It's not a necessary part of marriage because somebody can be critically injured and not able to fulfill that part of.
Well, initially it
has to be. Yes. Initially it has to be
become one flesh. Yeah.
But it doesn't suddenly make the marriage no longer a marriage if something happens and somebody can no longer engage in the marital act. But it is, as you were saying, you should see the whole good of the person. And in every marriage, there's going to be times where you have to abstain, because somebody is sick, because somebody is absent, because if someone's parent is dying and they've had to go across the country for a few weeks to take care of their parent, there is a reason that married people are called to develop the virtue of chastity. And not just because it is a virtue and it's good for all of us to have it, because you really have to learn to live chastity within marriage. And so if you can't see the whole of the person in front of you, and the needs that they have and the struggles that they have, and be able to control your own desires to order them towards the good of the person, then you're not loving them. You're lusting after them. So there can absolutely be lust in marriage. And that lust is what it reduces a person to an object who is there to fulfill your needs. And that's not what we want. And a good man, there's good men out there who are struggling with pornography addictions. And women. There's good
increasingly.
Women.
A lot
erotica
of women.
For women, especially erotica.
Smut novels is women's porn.
Yeah, smut novels.
And by the way, when I see this is on Instagram and TikTok, but these girls who make jokes about reading smut novels in front, with their husbands, their husband's what are you doing? And they're like, ha, ha, ha. I'm like, can you imagine if a man was making content joking about looking at porn? Right. We were thankfully some people would be like, that's horrible. Some people are like, whatever, I don't care. Because porn is unfortunately.
They're like, hey, let's watch it together.
Yeah, exactly. Watch it together. Yeah. It'll strengthen your marriage. But I just think it's just the coarsification. We're so coarsened. Yeah. We don't have to be this way. And, there's pushback against that, of course. But yeah, in my views, if the writing is erotica, it's designed for arousal and sexual fantasizing.
Because women tend to be aroused differently.
It's female porn. That's what it is.
It is. And so, no, I think there's lots of good people who find them in them. And they're like, okay, if I get married, this will solve that problem. But it's not going to. Find a spiritual director, find a counselor, become the kind of person who can make a free gift of yourself, whether you're a man or a woman. Become the person you want, you would want your child to marry. If you're a man, become the kind of man you'd want your daughter to marry. If you're a woman, become the kind of woman that you would want your son to marry. And then enter back into the dating pool. It's not forever, not dating for 6 months, not dating for a year. Learning to get your addictions or your struggles or your wounds under control, that only makes you a better wife. Chris and I have a better marriage for all of the healing that God did in our hearts during the years that we weren't. And I didn't have a pornography addiction, but I had wounds from my eating disorder. I had wounds from my childhood. I had wounds from not being married in my late 30s, and God really did a great work in me so that I could be the kind of wife that I wanted to be for Chris when we married. And you don't have to be perfect to be married, but you do have to be capable of giving a full gift of yourself and not reducing your spouse to an object. That's a baseline for any marriage.
What is we talked about smut novels or, erotica novels for women, but what would you say, the man struggle potentially with lust and a woman struggle with lust, but usually it's talked about in the terms of men, have porn addiction at a higher rate than women, right? That is an objective fact right now. Women, though, have other struggles. How can, and I know you have a book about this for single girls, the Single Girls Guide, but what would you say is the lesson or a lesson for women about how they can prepare in their single years to be the best they can be as a woman and for a potential future spouse to bring into the marriage wholeness and health and the right perspective on what the man the relationship with the man so that the expectations are ordered. Because I think sometimes as women, we can get tripped up with expectations for men that are not, that are crippling for them.
Yeah.
And end up being super crippling for us and disappointing for us when it's like we think we're living a Jane Austen novel. Right. So, like, for example, the girl who said, "Oh, you proposed to me on the couch." Like, what about the helicopter? You know, like,
where's the camera crew filming it?
But that, unfortunately, because of the culture and where we're at, that is a temptation for women. Yeah. That's one example of a temptation, I should say.
I think the best thing you can do, the best thing that I can't speak for everyone. I can tell you the best thing I did was I spent a lot of time with married couples. I spent so much time with my friends in their kitchen. Like, if there's anything young married couples would love, it's a single woman with two hands that is willing to like hold a baby or
cook a meal
or be like, yeah, I'll go to the zoo with you. No problem. Like, I spent so much time just living life alongside married couples. And I saw what was important in a marriage. And it wasn't the grand romantic gestures, although those are lovely if you get them. It was a man who does what he says he's going to do, a man who follows through with his word, a man who honors his commitment, a man who leads like Christ did and who puts himself at the service of his wife and children. Like, I knew what I wanted in a husband and I knew what mattered in a husband. I had a great dad, so that helped, but also because I got to see so many other marriages up close. Yeah. Because nobody's parents, no matter how great your parents' marriage is, it's not perfect, you know? And so seeing lots of other good marriages and bad up close taught me a lot about what I wanted my expectations to be. And then it always comes back to one thing I felt like I talked to women about a lot back then when I was doing a lot of talking about single life, was hope. And if you have to know Christ. Like, you have to know who Christ is and you have to believe his promises, because if you want Christ and the life he has for you, like if you really believe that he has what is best for you, then you're not going to compromise with anything else. You're not going to be like, well, okay, I'll sleep with this guy hoping that he'll marry me. I'm not going to like marry this guy who treats me as a jerk because I so desperately want a husband. Like, when you want Jesus more than you want anything else, then that helps you make better decisions. That, like, I'm so glad that what I wanted was Jesus and not just a spouse. Because if what I had just wanted was a spouse, I might have made some very bad decisions and not have the life that God has given me. And I'm so grateful for that. So spend time with married people and spend time with Jesus. Like, learn to trust in who he is and know that he wants more for you than you can possibly want for yourself.
I love that. It's so beautiful. One other question about this before we move on to the beautiful kids, and where people can find your amazing work. I think today there's an identity crisis at large for women and for men. We all have identity crises everywhere. Like human anthropology, we don't know where we're from, what we're made for, you know, what you were talking about earlier. There's so much confusion. And so there are these stereotypes now for women, like pick your avatar. You could be the trad wife and you can be, you know, you homeschool, you bake your sourdough bread, you're a submissive wife, you know, maybe you veil at mass and you are, you know, I don't want to, again, say this in a pejorative way because there's very beautiful, people living this out. But then maybe there's elements that go even more rigid than that. But then over here, you're 50-50 partnership. He's my partner. Don't say husband, wife, you know, we go into this and we 50% everything. I bring in the money, you bring in the money. You watch the kids, I watch the kids. We're equal. Basically, men and women are very much the same. We don't have sort of defined roles in the household beyond like what we pick and choose. And there's, you know, we could say feminism over here. You know, this person's a feminist. This person is, you know, they're not traditional. They're usually not people of faith. And then there's all this in between, right? Of how this lives out, how you can live this out. What do you think how should women, do you think, see their role in a marriage and prepare for that role of being wife and mother? And I got to say one other thing. You were thinking, I wanted 6 kids. Like, you always wanted to be a mom. Your career kind of found you. You didn't like go after your career. Kind of, I mean, you worked hard and you were very bright, but you kind of, you were always making space in your life for dating, for love, to be open to life when you got married. Like, if I was going to be a PhD, because I guess I better get more education, I'm going to do this with my kids under tow. Like, that was your mindset always. So you were great marriage material, Emily. You were great. And Chris eventually saw that and now he's happily ever
That's
after,
what my
right?
friends' husbands kept saying. They're like, she's great.
Why is but a lot of women, I think, are in an identity crisis of what does it mean for me as a woman to be great marriage material?
And okay, so I love John Paul II's theology of the body, which most people think is a theology of sex, and it's not. It is an anthropology, and it talks about what it means to be a human person made in the image of God, with a body, with a soul. Like, how do we image God? And he draws on particularly the writing of like St. Edith Stein, Dietrich von Hildebrand, Thomas Aquinas, Hildegard of Bingen. Like, there's all these like, big names from throughout Catholic history who he draws on. And that for me was really essential when I discovered it, because I can remember being, 21, walking around my college campus, being like, what does it mean to be a woman? I don't know what it means to be a woman. Like, people have been telling me all my life I'm really smart, and so I'm going to like rule the world and do all these things. But then I see all these girls here who are super beautiful and sexy, and they're the ones the boys pay attention to. And like, I don't know, maybe it means I need to be thinner and I need to be sexier. Like, what does it mean? And when I discovered John Paul II's theology of the body, it taught me that like the heart of femininity is receptivity. It's being able to receive the gift of another, to see the other. Like, when you and I are sitting here, like, do I see you, or do I just see what I want to talk about? Like, what are your gifts? What are your strengths? How do I meet you where you are and love you where you are and welcome you in and be kind to you? And women often don't do that. Like, we either, we can be cliquish. We can cut each other off, cut each other out. We can be a mean girl. We can be passive and never really let a person in and kind of hide our feelings and
don't seek others out, right?
And don't seek others out.
Inward focused. We're not focused on the other.
We can be narcissistic. And so I would say, if you want to be the best wife you can be, one, obviously spend a ton of time with Jesus, receive as much of his grace as he will pour out on you, but really look at receptivity. Like, do you see the people around you? How do you love them? And then do it. Like, who are the friends who need your attention? Who needs you to call them? Who needs you to listen to them? Who needs you to say, hey, can I babysit for you this week? Or, hey, you've had a really rough job. Your boss has been a jerk. Can I take you out tonight? Like, love the people around you, receive them, see them. And then when you and your husband are in a situation where you have to make decisions, you will have cultivated the habit of receptivity, and you'll have a relationship with Christ. So you'll be able to discern what Christ is calling you and your husband to. Like, that's the thing. It is a marriage is always between two particular people. And Lila Rose is Lila Rose. You're not anyone else. Emily Chapman is Emily Chapman. I'm not anyone else. My husband is not anyone else. And so you and your husband have to figure it out between you. Like, how personal. Has God gifted you? How has he blessed you? What is he calling you to? And if you have developed the habit of receptivity and he's developed the habit of engagement, of being an engaged man, you're going to have a much easier time living the call that God has called you to. And like, that's the most specific advice I can give.
That was beautiful, Emily. Beautifully said. And it creates space for everything within the moral order. That is the beautiful kaleidoscope of personalities, callings, giftings, experiences that God's men and women have.
Yeah. God has given us so much freedom. So much freedom.
Yes, he really has.
And we don't want that freedom half the time. We're like, no, Lord, I want the rules. Tell me how to dress. Tell me how to go to mass. Tell me exactly what music I should be listening to at mass. Tell me how I should be spending every moment of my day between.
Tell me exactly how to show up as a wife. Give me the parameters so I can check the boxes.
Right. How should I be educating my children? Yeah. How should our house look? What should I be baking bread? And God's like,
do you like baking bread?
I want to bake bread.
I'm like, I actually don't. I like occasionally baking like a coffee cake.
I can't keep up the starter.
The starter is our nanny, who's like a, amazing blessing to my household. She loves baking bread. So I do have homemade sourdough in my kitchen. I didn't bake it.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah. Right. She made it.
People really struggle with the freedom. They want God to tell us what to do every step of the way, and God doesn't do that. He's like, no, I made you to be you, and there's no one else in the world who's like you. There's no one ever never has been, never will be. And I want you to love me. And I want you to give
and be loved.
Give my heart and receive my love. And then all the other stuff, like, as long as it's not a sin, like, be you, be the person I made you to be. Live life. Like, God works us through our desires, our good desires, as much as he does anything else. So yeah, I think there's just a real fear of the freedom that God gives us. There's so much freedom in Christ. And people are like, no, we want to be slaves. We want to be slaves. Lord, take this freedom away. And he's like, no, not going to do it.
That's why the moral law is such a blessing, because it's like, follow the moral law and then live, live abundantly, chase the inspiration, obviously live within order, the rightly ordered relationship. But the moral law is such a blessing because it sets you free to really live.
It is. It gives you these nice boundaries.
Yes.
That sets you in
Pretty
on the
clear.
big important stuff.
Don't sin.
And then you have all of this room to be who God made you to be.
So beautiful. You guys are living this beautifully. I got to hear the story of all of your children have incredible stories. So this is its own episode, actually. This could be its own also series. This is another TV series, Emily. Yeah. The story of your children.
It was pretty intense. It was a pretty intense time. So Chris and I got married and I was, 41. I just turned 41 when we got married. He was just about to turn 40. He was 47, I think. He was about to turn 48. But I'm so type A, choleric, I know, and I want babies. I've been waiting for a long time for babies.
We're 41, maybe we could squeeze in 6 if I just do one every 13 months, for the next
we thought
48
maybe
years.
3,
twins, 2 sets of twins.
Yeah. How do we do it? I was totally praying for twins. Which I learned that's not always the best thing to pray for. But I had done all the NAPRO tests, so I'm we're not even married and I'm getting my hormones tested. I'm getting everything checked out. The doctors are like, you look great. You should be able to hit the ground running. There's no reason you can't conceive. After several months, nothing was happening. I go back to the NAPRO doctors. I'm like, not conceiving yet. What else can we do? They're like, well, let's do an exploratory surgery. And so we spent really a year and a half doing everything possible to conceive because again, I so wanted to be a mother and I felt like God had told me I was going to be a mother and I was willing to do whatever it took within the moral boundaries that the church had set up. And I remember at one point I was in my kitchen. I was like, I'm not eating anything good. I'm taking all these vitamins. I'm taking all these hormones. I was like, I should be spontaneously reproducing. There should be a baby popping out of my head, Athena from the head of Zeus. It was not happening. And I was so broken. I felt like I'd waited so long and I'd done all the right things. I had been the good Catholic girl. I had been chaste. I had prayed. I had prayed the novenas. I had worked for God. I wrote fundraising letters for God, Lila. How awful fundraising letters are to write. I'm like, come on, Lord, all those fundraising letters and not a single baby. And no babies were coming. And I was so broken and I felt betrayed by God and I felt betrayed by my body and I felt like a failure as a wife and a mother. And at that point, I was doing a study for Endow about Humanae Vitae, and I didn't want to do this study because I was mad. I was like, I don't want to tell fertile couples that they should be happy to have a baby. I don't feel like giving a pep talk to anyone who doesn't get how blessed they are to be able to conceive. But in the course of that study, God really showed me that he wasn't asking anything of me and Chris, that he wasn't asking of anyone else. He was asking us to trust him with our fertility, just like we trusted him with every other part of our life. And that's what I hadn't been doing. I've been praying all the novenas and taking all the vitamins and doing all the special diets, but I was not trusting God. I was trying to control the situation. And when Chris and I realized that Chris was a lot more trustful than me, I was the one who was being super controlling. A little bit of a struggle for me. And so we decided to take a break. We're like, all right, we're going to step back. No more special vitamins for Emily, no hormones for Emily. I'm going to go ahead and
scheduling sex. Is that
no scheduling sex.
Just have fun, enjoy yourselves, but
nothing more miserable than scheduled sex. And we're like, this is just no charting. I stopped charting. I stopped doing everything. And during that time, we'd always talked about adoption, but we'd felt like it wasn't something, we didn't think we'd have the money. We didn't know how. We both worked for the church. I'm a Catholic writer. He's a Catholic school teacher, and adoptions cost around $50,000. We're like, there's no way. But during this time, we're like, you know what? We want to be parents. More than we want to be pregnant, we want to be parents. And if we're really trusting God, just like I opened the window to Catholic Match, and I opened that window and Chris walked in, we're like, maybe we just need to, we're not seeing what God is seeing. We're not seeing this clearly enough. We need to open a window and start thinking about adoption. And as soon as we opened that window, as soon, it's God started chucking babies. Our first son, I asked on Facebook, I asked people a question about home studies because we were renovating our home at the time. I was like, how done does our home have to be before we can pass a home study?
A home study to be eligible
to adopt. And within 24 hours of me posting that question, we had found an agency who could do a home study. a relative of mine generously stepped forward and said, I want to give you the money that you need to get started in this process.
Praise God.
We'd had a bunch of different recommendations for agencies, attorneys, whatnot. And we started talking to some of those people, just trying to figure it out. Within a month of that, it was the week I sent off the Endow study on Humanae Vitae. The very week I sent it off, one of those attorneys who we had talked to called us and said, look, I've got a mom who has some very specific requirements for a couple, and I don't have anyone on my client list who meets those requirements, but you guys do. How fast could you get me a profile to look at? It's like a little lookbook that you have as an adoptive couple. Like it tells some of your story, who you are, because you want the mom to at least, feel good about who she's placing her child with. And that was a Friday. By Sunday, I had that view book together. It's a good time to be a writer who does some knowledge of graphic design. And by Tuesday, that mom had chosen us to be the parents of her son. It was a very drama-filled adoption. They were very broken people. They had a lot of struggles. We had to provide for a lot of their needs. They're in California, and California adoptions tend to be very expensive because there's no limit placed on birth parent expenses, which is why so many people in California choose surrogacy over adoption, because it is cheaper to choose surrogacy, and it's more guaranteed because adoption is never guaranteed. You want the mother to feel free to change her mind at any point. And this mother she struggled profoundly. There was lots of drama. I shared too much online that I should not have. I never did again with future adoptions. I learned a lot. Through that first adoption. But I think you helped us at one point because we were trying to find them housing because they were homeless, and we'd found it was so complicated. We ended up finding a trailer for them, and we had to figure out how can we get this trailer, this mobile home, so they can live it to them. And you were connecting us with different pro-life people here in California because the adoption was here. It was crazy. But eventually our son was born and he was entrusted to us.
Amazing kid. Beautiful boy.
He's so beautiful. Yes. He's
striking.
All of our kids are very, very beautiful. And it was I should say before that, before I even was doing the study on Endow, I was giving a talk here in California. I was up in the Pasadena area giving a retreat at the Alhambra Carmelites.
Love them so much.
I adore them, and they're so wonderful.
They're the best.
And they introduced me to their founder, Mama Lucita, who she was married for 14 years.
Before she died? Or
No. They introduced me to her. Okay. My dead saint friends.
She's dead, Mama Lucy.
She's dead. Mama Lucy's dead.
You got to meet her?
No, she's dead. But they told me about her, and they said she was married for 14 years. And they couldn't have babies, but she and her husband decided the poor would be their children, and so they founded hospitals and orphanages. And they said they said she's great. If you're struggling to conceive, you talk to Mama Lucita. She always comes through.
And if it's not a biological child, she'll give you another child, some other child to love.
And so we started praying that around the same time I started the study for Endow, we started praying a daily novena to Mama Lucita. And so it was within 6 weeks of that we had been matched with Toby. And we called the sisters and they were like, we'll be praying for Toby. We'll be praying for Toby. And after Toby was born, I was giving a talk in Philadelphia, and their Mother Superior was there, and Toby was with us. And I was so excited to introduce, Mother Superior and the sisters that were there to Toby. And they said, well, there'll be more babies. And I said, no. We barely were able to afford this one. We had to put out take a second mortgage out on our house. I can't see how there'll be anyone else. They said, no. Once Mama Lucita starts giving babies, she keeps giving babies. So we get calls all the time from people telling us to ask Mama Lucita to stop praying. And I was like, oh, ha, ha, ha.
That's so funny.
And then sure enough, a year later, we were like, let's start the adoption process again. And we didn't know how we were going to fund it, but I was like, well, I'll write a cookbook, and anyone who donates to the adoption, I'll send them this version of a cookbook, because I cook a lot and I host a lot. And sure enough, we were blessed to adopt a little boy. He's what they call a stork drop. So we got a call on our porch. They're like, hey, baby boy's been born. How fast can you get here if you want to be his parent? So we're on the road to Texas 2 hours later.
Is that a safe haven job?
His mama, no, it wasn't a safe haven. Okay. The mama just didn't make a plan until.
She just said, I can't, I'm not going to parent.
There was a lot of trauma involved in her pregnancy. Yeah. And she always planned on adopting, but Beckett was she was always going to get around to it.
Yeah.
She was going to get around to creating a plan, but Beckett came early, around 34 weeks.
Another gorgeous kid.
He is beautiful. He was intense from the moment he was born. He's just intense now.
Choleric? Melancholic?
Choleric, sanguine, or sanguine choleric. Yeah. We can't tell yet which it's going to be. Yeah. Super, super intense.
You're choleric sanguine or choleric
melancholic?
Oh, melancholic.
Yeah, the melancholic keeps the choleric in check.
Yeah.
It keeps me bearable.
Yeah.
So Becca came along, and he was in the NICU in Texas for 4 weeks. And it was during COVID. It was 2020. And then we finally got released from the hospital, got home. 6 days after we got home, we got a call. We're in the kitchen. Someone had brought us a meal, because I've got this baby who's not even full term yet. And Chris takes the phone call while I talk to the friend who brought us the food. Chris comes in a few minutes later and says that was Colette, who is our adoption attorney. Toby's birth parents are pregnant again. They want us to adopt. I thought he was joking. I didn't believe him. I was like, that's not funny, Chris. I was like, it's not funny. We have this
holding a newborn
preemie who's because he had acid reflux. He was throwing up on me 4 to 7 times a feed. He wouldn't be anywhere but my arms. The NICUs are traumatic for all babies, but especially for adopted babies during COVID when everyone was wearing masks. My son didn't see a human face for the first 4 weeks of his life. He didn't see a smile. I couldn't kiss him. I couldn't Why did
they make them wear the masks?
It was July of 2020, and Dallas was having a surge. He didn't have a mask on. Every NICU person did. I did.
But was that to protect him from COVID?
Protect him from COVID.
Did it protect him from COVID?
He never got it. Until
all right. Well, he saw your smile after 4 weeks. Thanks be to God.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
He definitely
Poor
and he
boy.
was an intense little guy, and he was throwing up all the time. And Chris is suddenly like, "Hey, there's another baby coming in 7 months," because we would never say no. It's our oldest son's full sibling. One of our family mottos is you never say no to a baby. So,
wow. You're 3 now. Would you take a fourth?
We almost did have a fourth. Okay. We lost a baby who we were going to adopt last January, who would have been sibling to Toby and Ellie's full sibling. And so if someone dropped another baby in our lap, yes, we feel like we're too old at this point to seek an adoption out.
But if they came to you,
I would love another baby, Lila. Yeah, I miss the newborn stage. I miss the froggy legged firsts.
Are you able to be in touch with the sibling of Toby and Ellie?
Well, no, that baby passed away at the end of the first trimester. So. That baby passed away. We actually had said yes to 2 other babies who had passed away. And we know that they know that we love them and would have been so excited to be their mama and dada. And we believe they're praying for their first parents and know that we would have loved them too. So Ellie came along 7 months later, and we got an RV and drove across country with a 2-year-old and an 8-month-old. And, had another NICU stay also during COVID, also in a city far away from home, on the other side of the country. And so 2.5 years, we had 3 babies, and it was wild and crazy and the most beautiful, miraculous gift I've ever been given. And which is why Chris and I can't regret not having gotten married earlier. It all worked out, because if we'd gotten married earlier, if we'd had children of our own, even if we'd adopted children, it wouldn't be these children. I wouldn't be mama to Toby, Beckett, and Ellie. I wouldn't know Toby, Beckett, and Ellie. I would have no idea who they were, that they even existed. And so I am so grateful for every single day it took my husband to get around to dating me and asking me to marry him, because God saw it all. And he saw it all. And it's so beautiful, Lila. And I'm so grateful.
The timing was perfect.
Because God's timing always is. He knows what he's doing. He's God.
Wow.
I have lots of good ideas and good plans, and I'm always trying to tell God how to do it. And I'm like, come on, Lord, you may be a good planner. But
somehow the master of the universe knows better.
Somehow he's better. He's better planning than me. He's even a better
planner
than
Emily,
I am.
But
I'm pretty good. I am not that good. So, yeah.
Emily, you're amazing. I know people listening are so deeply moved and inspired as I am. I'm cheering up over here. And I know there's also just the half of it, because I was like, you got to come back. You've got to make this a California trip. I know you're out here with your family. This has got to be a regular thing, but where can people find your work, and how can they get your most recent book?
All right. Okay. So,
and follow you on Substack.
Substack is where I write weekly. So I started Substacking when we had 3 little babies and I couldn't meet any deadlines.
Great read, everybody.
I got to figure out a way to help pay some bills. So Substack is always wonderful. I am on Instagram, not as much as I used to be. Emily Stimpson Chapman. I have a lot of books, over a dozen now. I've got 3 books coming out in the next 6 weeks.
You're amazing. You're prolific. I mean, 3 babies in 3 years, basically. And now they're, I know they're a little older, but they're still very little. And I don't know how you do all the writing you do.
But the books have gotten written out over a period. The fact that all 3 are coming out in 6 weeks is like a cruel joke. So if you've got a couple of them, the first is the Adoption Cookbook, which is, that's the cookbook I first wrote. This is the adoption,
but it's in print now.
How
lovely.
The St. Paul Center, Emmaus Road Press had approached me early on. They're like, this is great. And then COVID happened and no one was hosting. So
whose hand is this, Emily?
That's Ellie's little hand.
This is Ellie's hand.
I wanted, and the kids are in there.
So we've added
to it. There's 100 recipes that are easy for families, hosting.
Do you bake sourdough bread?
I do not make sourdough bread. I don't really bake. There's like 8 dessert recipes in there.
You're more of a cook.
I'm a cook.
Than a baker.
But there's lots of recipes on hospitality and how you hosted the busy seasons, how you welcome people into your home without killing yourself. Because really, I just want to foster community.
Okay, here's the family, everybody. The gorgeous family. You guys can see it. I don't know if you guys can see it, Harris, but we could also show it. But this is Emily and little Ellie here, and your sweet husband and your 2 boys, your 2 handsome boys. So sweet.
So there's that is coming out. And I just, I'm really excited to see that. That helped us adopt 2 babies. And what I'm hoping is that it really helps other people, because we see adoption as an act of hospitality. You know, we were so thrilled to welcome these babies into our homes and into our lives. Like, that's what hospitality is. It's welcoming the other in and loving the other. And that's what we do with our children. And that's what we do with our friends and people who we want to become friends. And I hope this book helps other people do that. And so there's that. There's the Story of All Stories that we already talked about, which is a story Bible for young Catholics that is like if you invited me to your home and said, tell the story of salvation to my kids, like help them to know how dramatic and exciting and funny and beautiful it is, and that they are a part of this story. That is what the Story of All Stories is. And that comes out October 12th from Word on Fire. And then there's one more book that I wrote when Ellie was a newborn. I don't know how I wrote it. I actually was rereading the proofs recently and I'm like, oh, this is good. I don't remember writing a word of it.
And sleep deprivation.
Yeah,
right?
It's about the history of winemaking and Catholicism. So it's like a coffee table book that looks at different vineyards in Italy and Spain and France and their Catholic connections.
How fun.
It was fun, but they all got written out over a very long period of time. So no one should be under the illusion that I am writing enough to keep a Substack going and write 3 books all at the same time and keep my children alive.
Well, you've also just got a really supportive and amazing husband.
I do.
You're a team.
He's so proud of me and he's so proud of the work I do. And he believes very strongly that God has called me to this. And he always says he's like, I'm St. Joseph. I like to be the one. He's like, Mary had this great calling and St. Joseph's call was to really support Mary through what she did. And I am not the Blessed Virgin Mary by any stretch of the imagination, not even close, but he loves to see himself as like,
how beautiful.
Supporting my work.
What a guy. That's what you want. That's the best.
Yeah.
How beautiful. Emily, thank you.
Thanks so much.
What a treat. Seriously, such a treat. Come back.
Oh, we'll come.
There's a million more things to talk about.
So we'll totally come back.
So good. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Lila Rose Show with Emily Chapman. Go check out her stuff. It's going to only encourage and inspire you. Also, thank you so much to everybody who is liking the show, subscribing to the show. It helps the show continue to grow. And I'm so excited to get to create this all with you. A huge thank you to our partner, EWTN, the largest religious broadcaster in the entire world. EWTN is reaching millions of people every single day with the beautiful truth of the gospel. You can watch new episodes of The Lila Rose Show 24 hours before they hit podcast app over at EWTN.com/on-demand.